so let's just jump right in. How have you been?
Yeah, man. I've been good. I've been good. I mean, missing you guys and everyone at training, but I know. But other than that, yeah, I'm doing really well. And obviously, it's been an exciting last couple of weeks, so I'm
Ah,
feeling
we'll
pretty
get
good.
to that. We'll get to that
Yeah.
later. We'll get to that later. Right, okay, right. So you've started it off brilliantly there. Then it's been an exciting last couple of weeks,
Yeah.
with some big news to come that we'll chat about later. But what about before the exciting news that came about? How's it been for you in lockdown and what you've been up to?
I think lockdown for me has been, I think I'm really lucky. I live in quite a countryside area. Obviously, I can go on some nice walks. I'm fortunate to have quite a lot of space in the house and plenty of equipment for training. So for me, I felt okay. I think a lot of people have really struggled, and I really feel for people that have, had small houses to live in or maybe live in the city, but I'm lucky to live in the countryside. So yeah,
Living in country.
living in countryside.
Brilliant.
I bet if some of the guys listening from training, they can tell I've been home for a while.
Cause you proper Yorkshire now.
Rough Yorkshire, mate, yeah.
Brilliant. But has there been any days in lockdown where like it's sucked or it's been a bit difficult? Because I know you said it's great. You can go out for a walk. You get loads of space in the house, so
Yeah,
you and the family
yeah,
can do lots of stuff. But surely there must have been some pretty rough times that obviously folk will be able to relate to, and
yeah.
has that maybe you've not, maybe you've just plain sailed it, and you know what, if you have, good for you. But what's the overall experience been like, other than obviously you've had great times, you've said, but has it been a bit
Yeah.
crap?
Well, I think similar to you, we're so used to being around a lot of people all of the time. Usually, I spend the majority of my week in Sheffield training, and when I'm not in training, I'll go for a coffee with you guys or other friends in Sheffield. But to come home and to be at home and be around my family, but not be able to go and see my friends and spend time when they're all home from university, and we know that we're free to spend time with each other. If it wasn't obviously for the pandemic, then yeah, that's been pretty tough. Everyone's so close, but so far away at the same time.
Yeah, so I think for me the key message coming out of that is just obviously appreciate what's around you. You know, you've got the lovely
Yeah, I'd agree.
countryside, and now, I mean, you're on slightly different regulations from Scotland, so you can go meet up a bit more easier and see a lot more
Yeah,
folk. So that must be great.
yeah,
That must be
yeah,
really good.
definitely.
But I wanna go all the way back to little baby Shaq. Little baby Shaq. So you're
Little baby shark.
little baby Shaq. You're 21 now. Um,
Yeah.
but you're a pretty. I mean, you've always been active. You've always been involved in
Hmm.
sport pretty much, because you used to swim, didn't you, when you were little baby Shaq?
Yeah, little baby Shaq used to be a swimmer, and probably from about the age of 6, I was competing competitively in my local area, and then as I got a little bit older, started doing some regional things. Um, yeah, so I've always been uh, heavily involved in sport and wanted to take it on at an elite level.
Yeah, so six is super young though. Like, I've always been sporty with like my older brothers and that, as you know. But
Yeah,
like, to start competing at 6, like that's mental. Like, what was that
yeah.
like? Do you remember that time much? Obviously, it was really young.
I do actually remember like my first swimming competition. My family joke about this now is I'm you might have noticed, but I'm quite a socially awkward person sometimes.
Yeah.
That's how it is. And I remember preparing for my first race, and they just used to parade like the youngsters around, like from youngest to oldest, and I was obviously really young, so I was at the
Weird.
front. So I had my goggles on, like we weren't ready to jump in or anything, but I was ready to go.
So you've always been like very active, super sporty, and like ready to get involved. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when did, like you said, you've always been sporty, but was there a point where you were like, actually, I wanna compete because I really enjoy it, or did that take a bit of time?
I think I've always watched a lot of sport as well as playing it from a young age, and I used to watch Wimbledon, all the ATP tennis tours, and also obviously being involved with my swimming. And I remember in 2008 watching the Beijing Olympics, and I watched Rebecca Adlington win 2 golds, and I remember being sat there and I was like, all right, okay, I really want to go to a games and be an elite athlete. And from that point onwards, I don't think I've really looked back or changed my view on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Beijing as well. Like sitting in like, at home watching it was fantastic. You obviously,
Yeah.
for me, I resonate more with London, as I'm sure you will, but we can get to that later. But so in 2008, you would have been what, 8 years old?
Yeah, 8 turning 9.
Yeah. So massive year for you for a number of reasons. You've just watched
Yeah,
the you've well,
just a
well,
little.
we're coming to it. So you've just watched the Olympic Games. You know, you're a swimmer at this point. You've watched the Olympics. You've watched Rebecca Adlington absolutely smash it.
Yeah.
You've decided, right, I'm going to be an Olympian. Couple of months later, what happens?
So yeah, a couple of months later, that was pretty much turned on its head for a little while because I was involved in quite a serious accident and I ended up breaking my back and becoming paralysed. So yeah, quite a dramatic turn of events in that small space of time.
I love how chill you are about it. I broke my back, you know.
Yeah, just a casual breakage of the spine. No big deal.
So do you mind talking about that? Like what actually
Yeah, no
happened? Like
problem.
what you said you broke your back, but
Yeah.
what is your experience of that?
Yeah, so as I've said, I live in the countryside and we used to live on a farm. And my dad was quite, like he was involved in like machinery building, stuff like that. And I ended up sat underneath the arm of a digger. Not an ideal place to sit for anyone wondering. Um, and yeah, unfortunately, there was just a fault with the digger and the arm came down and ended up crushing me. And that led to me breaking my back.
Wow, like that's incredible. And I know you said, oh, it's an
Yeah,
unfortunate position to be in,
yeah.
but obviously I know you super well, and this was something you did all the time though. You would sit on the digger all the time, wouldn't you? Like,
I mean, I'd go to work with my dad and I'd end up in probably in some situations that maybe weren't ideal for a child to be sat in.
but you're fine. You feel safe. You're with your dad. You know, you're going to be
Yeah,
fine. And
exactly. Like you trust your parent, don't you? And
eh,
sometimes these things just happen. And granted, it probably wasn't the best position to be in, but these things happen. And yeah, it was just a bit of an unfortunate accident.
do you remember that accident, or do you remember it unfolding? Like,
Yeah, I do remember actually. Like I remember kind of being sat there and seeing it sort of like coming down. But I guess in that moment you have like fight or flight, and I kind of just had freeze, so I couldn't really move, if that makes sense. And then I remember sort of waking up afterwards, and I was like, oh, can't feel my legs.
wow.
And yeah, so it is quite a lot for a 9-year-old to take in, but I think as well it probably works in my favour that I was so young that I didn't realise the seriousness.
Yeah, I think that's such. Like you've done nothing but laugh about it. I'm trying to have a serious conversation about you breaking
I
your
know.
back. Like it's fine. Like that's that just shows obviously your whole mental attitude towards it and how the fact that you don't really care. You know, it's
Yeah, and I
you.
think it just feels like such a long time ago that when I talk about it, to be honest, it feels like a story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like it's. I mean, you've now spent more time living in a wheelchair than you have before it. So it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
this is your
Exactly.
life. Yeah, and that's.
Yeah, and this is my normal, isn't it? So
So, yeah.
yeah.
So what did the recovery process of that look like? You know, because it's something that I've never experienced. I've been in hospital, I've had operations, but you know, I've never
Yeah.
had a spinal injury. What's the recovery process of that like?
It was quite a long recovery process for me. I had other complications. I had punctured lungs from breaking my ribs as well. So when I initially went in to have my fixation operation, both of my lungs collapsed. So I had to have my operation postponed, and
Wow.
obviously not being able to breathe is extra concern in that situation.
Yeah.
And then following from that operation, when it went okay, thankfully, I had 6 months of rehab in the Sheffield spinal unit. And my mum stayed with me for the entire 6 months. She never left my bedside. She slept at my bedside. So yeah, poor Jay Shack. But we came out of the other side, and they did a great job with me at Sheffield. And now I live a completely independent life. So
Fantastic. So what you said there, I've known you for years and years, too long actually.
rude.
And you said that you punctured your lungs. I don't think you've ever told me that actually. You just because you just like as you said, it feels like a story from years and years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's incredible. But what is you said you were going in for a fixation operation. What is that?
So basically, where you've broken your spine, they put in two metal rods, to fix the spine straight until the bone heals.
All right. So like basically, so you've now got. I
Yeah,
mean,
like getting
obviously,
pins in your leg, but
yeah.
just in your back.
Yeah, because obviously I know this, but so for folk that don't, so you've got two spinal rods,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
each side, and that just sort of keeps you upright, basically.
yeah, and
Um,
stable.
which is quite funny because if you try and bend down for something, your back's like straight and you're like, oh.
Yeah. We have this running joke where I'll be like, shall I see how far I can bend my back? And
It doesn't go anywhere.
Nothing.
It doesn't go anywhere. So you were in, wow, right, so 9 years old, you've just watched the Olympics, you then subsequently went on to break your back and then had 6 months recovery in hospital. Your mum's not left your bed. Absolute legend that she is, Big Jane.
She is a legend.
But how, like, what does that feel like? Like you were 9 years old. You were a kid.
Yeah. Well, I do remember. I sort of came round from my operations, and I was a little bit more conscious. And I do remember saying to my mum, like, "Does this mean I can't go to an Olympics now?" And I remember her looking at me, and obviously she didn't really know what to say. But at the time, I had doctors who told me about the Paralympics, and like I said, I was so young that I don't think I understood the severity, and maybe that worked in my favour in a lot of ways because it's such a drastic change in your life. And I think children just seem to adapt better to things. And like you said, now I feel like I don't know any different. I've just grown up in a wheelchair now.
Yeah, and do you remember getting your first chair?
Yeah, I do remember getting my first chair, and I was absolutely horrific. I couldn't wheel in a straight line to save my life, and I think my mum was a bit like,
how's she going to manage?
Yeah, how is she going to manage? But thankfully, I can wheel in a straight line now.
So, well, I don't know. I've seen you in some questionable circumstances. So, that's going off in a whole other conversation. Yeah. So what's So you've done the rehab. Actually, can you tell me about that? What does rehab look like? Because obviously you said you can't feel your legs or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the introduction is just getting used to how things feel. So obviously you've become paralysed, you can't feel your legs the same way, or you might not be able to feel them 100%. A lot of people are they can't move from below the waist or the neck, wherever they've had their injury. So a lot of that is just getting used to being able to sit up on your own, get used to how it feels, because it does feel a lot different. I used to always say that I felt like a genie, like I was just floating and my legs didn't really belong. And then moving on from that, they tried to get you to do some stretches and learn, how to stretch out your legs, because obviously being sat all day isn't what your body's designed to do. Mm-hmm. So learning how to stand up in a standing frame, which basically blocks your knees and supports you in a standing position. And just general living life in a wheelchair and how best to look after yourself, and just things that you wouldn't know being an ordinary average Joe who hasn't faced life with a disability.
Yeah, and as you said, stuff that you wouldn't know as an average Joe or someone that hasn't had a disability. What was the hardest transition from obviously being like, because you showed me photos of you like as a kid running around and stuff, and I'm like, that is so weird. You're on your legs. I don't like it. Like, I don't like seeing photos of you. Like, it's like you've seen photos of me with like, if I've got a prosthetic hand on, you're like, that is so
yeah, and I'm like, that makes me feel unwell. Please take your hands off now.
Exactly. So I've seen photos of you running about as a kid, and I'm like, oh no, delete that. So what was the hardest transition? Obviously, going from walking to not walking, but what was the toughest side? Was it getting your head around it, or was it just actually learning how to be in a chair and do things from a whole new perspective?
Yeah, I'd say probably just learning how life in a wheelchair works, to be honest. I'd say that I've always pretty much got on with things, and I was so young that I don't think I could fully process just how serious it was. So for me, it would just be little things like places you used to play with your friends. Does it have steps? The little things that you would never normally think of. And obviously where I live in quite an old town, and my primary school had lots of steps. So before I could return to school, a lot of changes had to be made. And wheelchairs and steps, not the best of combination.
It's not ideal. No. So you said going back to school. How long was it before you went back to school?
I think I had my accident in the February of 2009, and I went back to school, I think would maybe be September that year.
So like the next school
the
year
next school year, yeah.
And what was that like?
I think I was very nervous to go back to school. Obviously it was a lot different, and like I said, there was a lot of adaptations to be made at school, but everyone supported me really well. My friends never treated me any differently. And I don't think my friends were very overwhelmed by the situation at all. We just carried on as normal, playing like normal. And they've always been very supportive of me. So I think everyone was just happy to see me back at school and happy and well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think a lot of your friends' attitude comes from the way that you deal with it as well,
Maybe a little.
because you clearly just don't care. You're like, I've broke my back, so what? And that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
And I think your friends would have fed off that energy, because if you could easily have pushed into school on day one and been like, oh, I broke my back, like life sucks. Whereas,
yeah,
whereas
yeah.
I know you would have just have pushed up and been like, hey, and just like
I'm back.
exactly, like you'd have just got on with it, and that would have put your friends at so much ease, because I mean, they'd have been well within their rights to be like, oh my god, what do we do with Megan now?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, and treat you like this little precious thing, and you know what I mean? Like, whereas actually just
yeah,
by getting on with life, they get on with their life and treat you the exact same. So
yeah.
that's incredible.
100%. And I
Yeah,
think I've always wanted to put people in a situation where if I can make myself feel comfortable about a situation, that others as well feel comfortable with it. And I think my friends and people that I've gone to school with have always known that they can, if they're unsure of something, like, please just ask me, I won't be offended. I think a lot of people with disabilities, as long as it's asked in a productive and a nice way, of course, like everyone's willing to answer and educate people.
yeah, and I think that's such a key message to get out there is
Yeah,
if you do
yeah,
like, and it's one of the things that really gets me is if like kids will naturally stare, and I have
yeah.
no issues with it whatsoever.
No, no.
But then parents like grab them and like try and like, oh no, don't stare, and it's like
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
seeing something very different from their norm. Like,
yeah,
like me with no hands and one leg, and like I love going out shopping or whatever with you, because I'm no hands and one leg, and I always wear shorts, so you always see it. You're there in a wheelchair, and the looks we get are incredible, and it's just
yeah,
like parents are just
yeah,
mortified, and it's like the kid has no idea what is going on. Like they're seeing some
yeah.
mad
They're just
cyborg
curious.
nonsense. Exactly, they're just curious. So yeah,
Yeah,
so that's brilliant. That's such a key message to get out there, is that just ask questions and don't be afraid
yeah,
to
100%.
don't be afraid to upset someone, as long as you do it in a polite, friendly manner that you would ask
Yeah,
anyone else any other question on the street.
yeah,
Then that's fine. So you've broken your back. You don't care. You've went back to school, hung out with your mates. But there was still this thing of you wanted to be an Olympian. You were a swimmer. When did you get
yeah.
back into the pool?
I got back into the pool probably maybe a year later. It actually took me a bit of persuading, because initially, like I said, when you first get in a wheelchair, and you've got paralysis, things do feel a little bit different. So initially, I used to find that swimming felt weird, and I didn't like the way the water felt on my legs, sort of thing. Um, and also, I wasn't sure whether I was ready to compare the difference of my swimming level, able-bodied, and how that might be, now I'm in a wheelchair. But once I got back into the pool, I think it was very. I quickly got back into it and enjoying it, and I kind of felt like I'd never left.
Brilliant. And did you, as you said, that whole difference of being an able-bodied swimmer to then being a para swimmer, did you ever get involved in para swimming events?
Yeah, so it wasn't so long till the Yorkshire Regional Disability Officer for Swimming heard about me and invited me along to some events, and I competed in some Yorkshire Championships and eventually went on to compete in the national championships. Yeah, so I did start competing in para, but it was really close to me finding table tennis, and I think I very quickly jumped paths and I just fell in love with table tennis.
Yeah, and you said you jumped back in the water after a little bit of persuasion, but it wasn't long after that you found table tennis. How did you find table tennis? Like, how did it become part of your life?
Yeah, well, I got invited to a Playground to Podium event in Leeds, and for people who don't know what that is, it's basically an event where they invite lots of children they know that are registered with a disability from different schools in the area, and you can try out different Paralympic sports. And the idea is basically that you find the sport that you enjoy, you get the support that you need from coaches, and it's supposed to find the next generation of Paralympic athletes. And I think that's obviously worked pretty well. I know you're involved in the same sort of a system, and it's done a great job at finding the next generation.
So how old were you then? Would you have been like what, 10, 11?
Yeah, I would have been around. I think I would have been around 11.
All right, okay. So that so you've still, I mean, you're talking what 18 months plus. You've just
Yeah,
it's still relatively new to breaking your back. You're still figuring things out, and you think, oh,
yeah,
I'm going to give table tennis a crack.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
do you remember the first day you played? Because I remember the first day I played, I had so much fun, and I couldn't even hit a ball. Like I was dreadful, but I loved it.
Yeah, I remember, and I sort of went and they were doing it step by step, and people were like rolling the ball across the table. And I remember sort of rolling my eyes and looking at my mum like, I can actually hit a ball. Like I'd like to have a go. And then it was at that point where one of the coaches, Sean Marples, who's actually the pathway officer for our team now, he started practicing with me a little bit. And I very quickly got hooked in. I think it's quite addictive, isn't it? Like trying to get the ball on the table, changing positions, and yeah, from that point onwards, I was kind of hooked. Joined a club, and the rest is history, really.
The rest is history. I love it.
Yeah,
The bit I love about that is you're like, oh, I rolled my eyes. Can't imagine that for a second.
I know. We
The,
love an eye roll.
the trademark Megan Shackleton eye roll. It's
Yeah, or the
yeah.
knowing look. We have plenty of those throughout the years.
We have a few of those. It's brilliant. That's the thing. I was taking notes for this, and I was like writing down all the countries that we've been to together, and I was like, I've been away more times with Megan than I have with Siobhan. I've been to so many more countries with you, and oh, it's brilliant. So
Yeah, I spent Valentine's Day with you and Siobhan, so
you did.
that's it.
We're gonna come to that. 'Cause we were actually talking about that story today, and it's quite funny. So when did you realise that you were like, okay, I've played table tennis a couple of times. You've played with Sean, who, as you said, is the pathway development manager for our British national team.
Yeah.
Great guy. You've did the trademark eye roll. When do you get to a point where you're like, actually, I'm definitely packing in swimming. Table tennis is for me. I'm going to pursue it.
Yeah, I think I'd been invited to an event at EIS Sheffield where we train now, and it was pretty much all of the development players playing in the corner, and in on the other side was, the likes of Will Bailey, Ross Wilson, Aaron McKibben, who are our teammates now, but at the time they were going on to London 2012 to represent in the Paralympics, and I remember watching them and thinking that they were all so cool, and I really looked up to them. I was a little bit starstruck. Yeah, they'd laugh now. But yeah, it was probably in that moment where I thought I'd really like to give this a good shot, and I'd really like to be in their shoes one day.
And you went on to you got involved in some seriously somewhat big events really early on, because you played stuff like the UK School Games, and there'll be folk listening that don't really know what that is. So can you tell us a bit about what that is, and then what it meant to you?
Yeah, the UK School Games is basically all the schools around the country, whether that's from England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. They come together. It's a multi-sports event with table tennis, swimming, you name it, is involved, and you're selected by coaches in the area who know that you're a good standard, and you all get to compete. And I think that's one of the first tastes of what it's going to be like if you're going to progress from grassroots sport into elite at some point. But yeah, it was a great setup to be involved with, and I think my first school games was in the Olympic venues in London. So yeah, not a bad way to start off.
So that would have been in the XL.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was the tester venue for the games as well. So
that must have been so cool.
It was so cool. It was 100% so cool.
So you've done this multi-sport event. You've done the UK School Games. It's in the XL where London 2012 is going to be held.
Mm-hmm.
London 2012 rolls around.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
I think that just further enforced that I just really wanted to carry on with my training and hopefully get in the British team, and go to a games myself one day. I remember watching Will winning his medal and the boys, and yeah, I think that was another moment similar to Beijing where I was like, okay, this is what I'm aiming for.
Did you manage to get to watch any of London, in the XL? Did you get tickets or anything?
No, I didn't actually manage to get tickets, but I know that you did, and I'm still kind of jealous about that now.
I think it's the only thing I've ever done with table tennis that's made you jealous, because you've far outperformed me. So yeah, so no, London was amazing, and you're right. It was a catalyst for so many young athletes. I love saying that I'm still a young athlete, even though I look about 40. But it was such a big catalyst for so many young athletes to be like, that were obviously determined and wanting to, exceed and progress in their sport, but it just lit that fire in the terms of like,
Yeah,
actually, you know
yeah,
what, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna give everything for it. And it wasn't long after that, you were training pretty much full time, in Sheffield. And what did that feel like? Because you were training, as I said, very soon after London 2012. You were training almost 5 days a week, as well as going to school and everything. Like,
yeah.
what was that like?
So I got fast tracked into being in the pathway team in 2013. So I was invited to train in Sheffield with the national team a couple of times a week, as well as balancing that with school, as you'd know because you were there. And then in 2014, yeah, I got the call up into the performance team, and I think I was only just turned 15, so it was quite a big transition. And yeah, it was difficult balancing that, but I think that it helped me in both sides with my studies and with table tennis, just in terms of time management and becoming disciplined. But yeah, I was so lucky to have that experience so young, really.
Yeah, because to become I mean, you were fully funded at 15, weren't you? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
so, and as you said, to balance that with school life and social life, and from a very young age, you're making big sacrifices. You're missing out on parties, and
yeah, yeah,
undoubtedly, like, as the years progress, like holidays and stuff with your friends back home, but you've
yeah,
already been in this bubble because you're 15 years old. You're a paid, funded athlete,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you're just about to sit your exams. Like, that's
yeah.
I find that crazy. Like, because by the
I
time
think,
by the time I got to that level, I was like 18, 19, and I've done my exams. I've
yeah,
been to uni. I've done all that. Like, what was that like? That must have been tough though.
yeah, I think people always assume that it was tough, but I think for me, the goal has always just been before my accident, I wanted to go to an Olympics. After my accident, obviously that changed to the Paralympics. And for me, that's always motivated me. And in times, yeah, it is kind of hard when you have to miss a friend's big birthday. But they've always been on board and supported me and wanted me to carry on with my training or competitions as well. So I think I've always found it okay. And I really do enjoy training. So it wasn't it wasn't too much of a sacrifice, I don't think.
So what you're actually saying is that whole preconception idea of that sacrifices have to be made is a load of nonsense. You just get on with your life then. So
Well, obviously they are sacrifices. It's hard to miss, obviously, like some of your friends' 18s and stuff. But we've always agreed that, as soon as I'm free or back from a competition, we'll do our own thing and celebrate. And I think definitely now that they're glad that we both agreed to make those decisions and that they supported me along the way. So yeah, it has been tough at times, but I think it all works out in the end,
I feel,
sort
I
of thing.
feel I feel like I've forced you into saying that it was tough, because really what you just said
I
a minute ago
mean,
was that it was really easy. But I've twisted your arm there and forced you to be like, oh no, it was really tough. I'm sorry.
yeah, half and half.
Right. So you've had this, funding experience. You've been on funding at 15, and as you said, you were fast tracked, to get into that position because
Yeah,
you showed some serious talent at such a young age and a serious mindset. You were, as you said, you've been so determined since you were like 8 years old to go to the Olympics, then obviously Paralympics, and like you've obviously got this massive hunger and appetite for sport and to compete. So when did that lead you to like your first major championships for table tennis?
yeah. So I was invited to compete in my first Europeans in 2015. And that was in Denmark in the qualifying year for Rio. And I remember being asked, and obviously I was in the main team, but I just felt so young to be competing in something in such a serious qualification year for the Paralympics. So obviously that was a huge honour. But I went into it with just an open mind, get ready to get used to the competition. Obviously it was at a different level. Just take it all in and gain some experience really. And I did have quite a good competition considering. But I think with everything, like it's little stepping stones up all the time, and you get used to getting used to raising that marker to the next level.
Yeah, and I think obviously, as you said, it's those little stepping stones, and sometimes I feel like that's all like people for want of a better phrase, like people on the outside, they always see the stepping stones going forward.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like, oh, it's like, so I've done this, this, and this, and then you'll maybe post something that's a bit more realistic, like, oh, I didn't perform very well, and they like people never really seem to remember that. It's always just like, oh, but you've done this, this, and this, and it's like, yeah, but part of the journey is that little process, and that still includes going back the way. Like, you know, you have to obviously go back as an athlete, because it's never just plain sailing to the top. It doesn't happen. So you've picked up some great experience from Denmark 2015, your first European Championships, and then, you know, you keep training in the sort of guise of, can we maybe get into Rio 2016? I know that didn't happen. But you gave it a great shot, and for that you were rewarded by going on. What was it called? Is it the Inspirations Program or something like that?
So pretty much anyone that doesn't make it to the first Paralympic Games gets put onto a Paralympic Inspiration Program, and usually one from each national team gets to go. So I think from our team, Bill was selected to go to Rio, and he got to watch all the Paralympic events, watch the boys play, and I think it's just a great experiencing that firsthand, but maybe not in the same pressured environment, and just getting you ready for the day when you do finally qualify.
So you've been past Rio, and then shortly after Rio, there's another major championships. You got the European Championships, this time in Slovenia. You now seem to be, at this point, you start to be going from like strength to strength and putting in some like really good performances. So what was it like in Slovenia for you?
Yeah, in Slovenia, I think it was just another tiny little step forwards. I'd made a bit of progression over the years, and I made it to my first quarterfinal in the singles, which at the time I was absolutely over the moon. I remember drawing the Paralympic champion. I think I maybe lost 3-1, but I felt like I'd had a good performance and I was proud of myself. And from the previous European Championships, where I'd just been soaking up the environment, getting used to it and gaining some experience, I felt like I was beginning to become a contender. So yeah, it was quite a big switch in mindset going into it.
I love that you said you were proud to lose 3-1, because I think that is often so overlooked in sport, is the fact that you're a young developing athlete, and it's the fact that you've said, no, actually, you know what, I was proud not to lose, but you were proud of the performance. Do you know what I mean? And that's such a vital message that I think a lot of young athletes need to know, is that be proud of the process, because you're not always going to win.
100%.
So what did you feel coming out of that match?
Yeah, like you were saying, I felt proud that I'd reached the quarterfinals of my first Europeans, and it's not a bad match to lose at such a young age to obviously the Paralympic champion, years of experience, and I did feel like I'd began to challenge her, and it just gave me confidence going forwards in the future that, you know, as I gain experience through the years and carry on working hard in training, that eventually there's no reason why I can't win that match, in my eyes anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. It's all about, as you said, it's all about that process, that little stepping stone, bit by bit, and then you know, you'll get there and trust the process. So 6 months after the European Championships, Valentine's Day rolls around.
We love Valentine's Day,
and me and you have somehow wangled our way into a Toyota Parasport advertisement that's going to be nationally broadcast. And I still don't know how we did that, but me and you have been selected to go and be part of this advertisement, and we're down in London. It's Valentine's weekend, and I get about 20 minutes from the hotel, and I'm like, oh, I've forgotten my leg. I forgot the leg. So I play, obviously, you know, I play with a different table. I play with a leg that is made specifically for table tennis, and I'd forgot it. I'd left it in Sheffield, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Like, because if I try and play tomorrow in the advert, I'm just going to fall over, and that's just can't happen, obviously. And so I phoned Siobhan, and I was like, you're gonna have to come to London. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, I've not got my leg.
I've left my leg.
Standard procedure. Standard procedure. I've left my leg, and so she was not happy at all. So Siobhan ended up having a really late night. She got stuck in traffic. She got in at 3 a.m. to London, and just like
you're in the bad books.
I'm in the bad books. I remember like waking up at like 3 in the morning, whatever. Siobhan entered the room and she like pretty much just chucked it at my head, and and yeah, you're right. I was in the bad book. So we do the advert. We had a great time. It was a great laugh, and we were like, right, let's go and explore London. So we went to the National History Museum where you nearly ripped the door off my car. So we park up outside the National History Museum, and it's got the highest curbs you've ever seen. And I say to you, Megan, can you be careful because the curbs are really high, and I don't want you to smash in my door. Yeah, sure, no bother. And you fling the door open, and like the thing nearly comes off, and you're like, hee hee. And that was fine, right?
I've never seen you look at me that way before, but I do not want to receive that glare again.
No, I was not amused. So we have a great time. we go around the National History Museum. We go and have we went and got some burgers, and I remember. I think it's called Honest Burger in London. Shout out. And me and Siobhan wouldn't stop raving about them because we'd had them last time we were in London and we loved it. So we're like, right, we need to take you. Since we're down in London, it's our favourite place to go for burgers. And we get there, and I must have just forgotten, but there's this massive step to get inside.
We love a step, yeah.
And then you get inside, and you have to turn 90 degrees to your left, and there's this massive step. And I was like, oh, no, like what we're gonna do? And you were like, that's fine, we'll get in. And I'm like, how? And you were just like, oh, you can just lift me. And I was like, oh, So I remember like getting down in like some squat position and taking like a run up and just like smashing you up the step. And then we got in, and like these guys like picked up your chair. It was brilliant. So we had a great meal, and we get back to the hotel and we need to check in again. And this is where the story gets really funny because now I don't know if people think this is how it works, right? But for those listening that don't know, obviously, so I'm disabled, and my wife Siobhan is a redhead, and Megan is disabled and a redhead. So
what a combination!
What a combo! And so me and Siobhan are at the front desk with Megan just behind us, and we check in, and we get a room key, brilliant. So we start to like move away so Megan can like rock up and deal with it, and the woman's like, oh, are you not just sharing a room with your parents?
Yeah.
And
bearing in mind Martin is only 2 years older than me, so I don't know who that's more offensive to.
Well, understandably I look a bit older, but like, is it saying that you look super young? And Siobhan's mortified by this because she's like, well, now I look really old. If Megan's old enough to be my daughter, then I obviously look ancient. But it's the fact that like the people assume that because I'm disabled and then Siobhan's a redhead that we just have a disabled redhead kid. Like that's how it works. Beautiful. Like I don't know. It was brilliant. But yeah, I remember you trying to sass Siobhan, and she's like, "Don't talk to your mother that way." and we had a good time with it. It was a good laugh, but Siobhan's still absolutely mortified that people thought you were our daughter because she felt really old. But it's fine. So moving on, we get confused for a weird disabled family, and you start getting some serious results at the Pro Tours. Like you're beating some top players and taking some really good players to the very sort of final sets and things like that, really close matches. So did you start to realise that actually, you know what, I'm doing some pretty major stuff here. I reckon I've probably got a good chance of qualifying for the World Championships. Like how did?
Yeah, I think for me, it was quite the beginning of 2018 to the end was quite a dramatic change. And I remember like at the end when we have performance reviews at the end of the year, and Greg, our head coach, was saying, "What do you think has made the difference this year?" And I don't actually think it was anything within table tennis that shifted my perspective so much. Basically, in August 2018, as you know, I ended up losing a friend. She died quite tragically and really unexpected. And I think that pretty much just shocked me into realising just like, obviously how short life is and not to take it for granted. And I think it just took off so much pressure that I'd been putting on over the years of obviously wanting to make it to a Paralympics, wanting to be a top athlete. And I think it just made me really realise like, you got to enjoy what you're doing. You've got to, enjoy the journey as well as, the outcomes that come along with it. And I honestly really do believe that that's what shifted my performance from the beginning of 2018 to the end, just the change in mindset from putting pressure on myself to just making sure that I worked hard and enjoyed myself. And I think from then on, it's just sort of, that seems to have continued. Obviously, I'm not saying that I don't put the hours in the training hall, but I think the shift in mindset has just dramatically changed my performances.
Yeah, I think I remember that time so well, and obviously it was really difficult for you and your friends, and what I loved about that was that I remember, as I said, I remember that really well. You and your friend group just did everything together. You were obviously allowed some time off training and to go and to be with them, and it was lovely to see how close and happy you all were, and you really appreciated your time together. And I think that's what you said, like it's appreciating the time, no matter what you're doing, just appreciate the time that you're doing it in, because you don't know when it's going to stop. And the fact that you've now used that as somewhat of a motivation and a change of mindset has been incredible. And you managed to qualify in the end for the World Championships. And I missed out on qualification by one spot, so I don't know what it was like being there. So what was it like at the World Championships?
Again, like we were saying, little step by steps through the career. I think this was just another level up. Obviously, the best in the world are at the World Championships, and it was just, I had to raise my level. And I think under the circumstances of being a new player, new to the World Championships, and not a lot of pressure on me, and obviously with the new change in mindset, I think that it just sort of escalated me forwards a little bit again. And I was just so shocked at the time, because I made it to the quarterfinals of the World Championships, and it sort of felt like after a lot of really stressful, not so good times, that things were really moving onwards. And again, that pressure that I've been putting on myself for years to become a top athlete, I felt like I was becoming closer and closer to getting there.
Yeah, I think you definitely are at a level now where you're a top athlete. You've went from quarterfinals at the European Championships, which is still a fantastic achievement, but to then take that into a World Championships and reach the same level, it's definitely a much higher achievement, because there's so many more players there, and it's such a harder level. So, fantastic job, well done on your part. But there's something big around the corner. You've got the World Championships in 2019. We all know what was supposed to happen in 2020. So how did that qualification journey from the World Championships to try and qualify for Tokyo 2020, how did that pan out?
Yeah, I think qualification was obviously a much longer process for us all this year. As you know, the guidelines have changed a little bit. So what used to be a 12-month period was extended a little longer. But again, I feel like it was probably just the beginning of me making those improvements steadily upwards. And yeah, towards the back end of 2019, I saw myself really start breaking higher and higher into, some of the top world rankings. I think I just made it into the top 10 for the first time, coming really close up to the end of qualification. That's not to say that there's some little backward steps as well. Yep, I think we all remember.
As we know, Poland.
Poland. Martin says to me afterwards, he was like, "Have you got hay fever?" I was like, "No, just be crying,
It's fine, but that's part of the journey,
Yeah, exactly.
And we've all been there and been so emotional over losing matches and tournaments, because it means so much to us, But as you said, it is part of the journey. Like if you don't learn something from that loss and use 100%. That as fuel to go forward, then you're doing something wrong, and it's okay to lose, but you've got to find a way to bounce back from it and come through it and go again stronger. So as you said, you had, let's be honest, you had a crap time in Poland.
Oh not good at all.
you put qualification pretty much in big jeopardy. Sounds like I'm really hating on you at the moment, but you put
hate away. We're all friends here.
But you put qualification in massive jeopardy. And then, as you said, the qualification period, however, has been extended, because it's went from this 12-month period to a 15-month period, and then
I have one more tournament left.
You have one more tournament left. And how did that go?
thankfully it went well. But I think similar to what we were saying about setbacks is you've got to find a way to bounce forwards. And I think Poland was probably, for the first time in a long time, I'd started to put pressure on myself again quite a lot. I think I'd realised how close I was to qualification. I could sort of see it like in front of me. And I think I just tried a bit too hard, sort of thing. The pressure was a little bit too much. I didn't manage it in the best way possible. So moving on into Spain, I kind of wanted to just rediscover making sure that I'm enjoying my matches, as obvious as it may sound, and just keeping it simple, working towards the goal, like, but concentrating on the process rather than the outcome. And yeah, I had a really good Spanish Open, and yeah.
And I think that's great. You know, you've said it's concentrating on the process and making sure you enjoy the game.
Yeah.
And it's so easily done. The fact that, you know, you can be like, I need to win, I need to win, I need to win, I need to win, and then, as you said, you put so much pressure on yourself that actually you don't enjoy the game. Your mind ends up being in the wrong place, and you get the wrong results. And it's not through the want of trying. It's through sort of like over trying and trying to overcompensate because it means so much to you. And I think you hit it perfectly on the head. It's actually enjoy it, enjoy the process, and trust that you've done the right things. But one of the messages that I want to get across like all the podcasts is that, you know, I want to start breaking down the stigma and the sort of barrier of like sports psychology, because I think there's a lot of sports out there that like won't touch a psychologist because it has, you know, you're obviously, or you're not right, something's, you know, I don't want to go to a psychologist. Me and you use a psychologist like on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I love psychology.
Shout out Andy Hill and and previously Tim Pitt. But we like, me and you love using our sports psychologist, and we see the benefits of it all the time. And I think that's something that
and just in life as well. I think it applies to everything. But yeah, definitely over the years, I think, especially for me anyway, I think the majority of my improvements have probably come from a shift in mindset of really concentrating on the outcome and worrying about, oh, am I going to make it to a Paralympics? Am I going to do this? To turn it around to be like the process. What can I control at this moment in time? And then the little steps forwards, obviously, to hopefully achieving the end goal. But yeah, I completely agree. Like, psychology is massive.
Absolutely massive. And we come back from Spain. Me and you actually get told not to come into training. There's this there's this thing that's you know, propped up and made its way over to this side of the world called you know, coronavirus, COVID-19.
If you've heard of it.
I don't know if any of you guys out there have heard of it. It's this this new thing going on.
Yeah.
So we get told, right, you're not coming back into training, and as it turns out, of course, everything gets shut down a couple of weeks after. You know, so we've been on lockdown for an extra 2 weeks than everyone else.
Yeah.
But that in turn then shut off our qualification period. I think the calendar missed out on 3, maybe 4 sort of like Pro Tour events. So what's good, because you were in a much better position than me, and knew that you could maybe sneak into another tournament if you really had to and things like that. But that option then got taken away from you. And what did that feel like? Because you know that you were on the cusp of like, I'm qualifying, I'm not qualifying. But now you have no other chance, you have no other option, because out of your control, everything else is gone. So what was that like?
I think obviously things might play on your mind a little bit then. I was thinking, oh, like Poland wasn't great, like I'm not sure if I've done enough now, and it was quite tough not knowing for a while like how it was gonna pan out. But again, I've always just through this qualification period said to the coaches and my family, like, if I'm good enough to go, then I'll go. If I'm not, then I'll carry on until I am. So I try to just keep reminding myself of that, and you know, like I keep saying, like the process of it all, and then hopefully the outcome one day.
So one day rolls by, we get the outcome.
One day.
What was it?
Sorry, Matt, what did you say? I was laughing at you.
Oh, right.
We love that.
What was the outcome then of qualification?
Oh, yeah. Just that basically we're doing our Zoom training downstairs in lockdown. I'm waiting for a session with Andrew Rushton, my coach, and I get a text off Tom, our teammate, and he's saying, Meg, I think we've qualified. And I literally texted him back straight away in capitals, and I was like, do not say anything that is not true, because I'm going to be upset if this isn't true. But then 2 minutes later, I got a message from Anna Karin, one of the top players from Sweden, saying congratulations, and a picture of the list. And I sort of I just went running upstairs, see my mum like started crying. You know, we love a little table tennis cry.
Did you go running?
Well, I might have gone quickly up in the lift, but but yeah, it was such a shock, and to be honest, a massive relief, because I've been wanting to do it all my life, and it just feels nice to have, you know, finally ticked that off. And obviously all the hard work, and also the really tough times like Poland, it all works out in the end, and it's just all a part of the journey, isn't it? So it was nice to look back and just be proud of it all.
Yeah, and I think you totally deserve to be. Like, you've put in such a shift over the last number of years, and as you said, you've qualified for the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. It'll be, obviously, as everyone knows now, it'll be 2021, but but you know, just absolute credit to you, and you should be proud of it. It's amazing. But I think what we also need to say is that the way the system works is you've qualified for selection. So you've qualified through your world ranking, which no one can take away from you. But, you know, from a GB perspective and a Paralympics GB, that then goes to a selection committee. So hopefully, you know, as I'm sure the listeners out there will all be wishing for a good selection process for yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't envision...
The first step's done, we're just waiting for the second.
Exactly. I don't envision any issues, but what you can always say, no matter what, is that you qualified for Paralympic Games, and you...
100%.
In my eyes, that makes you one of the best in the world. You can't go to the Paralympics unless you're one of the best in the world, so credit to you, Meg. That's awesome.
Thanks,
like,
Matt.
you deserve it. It's amazing.